You're listening to Dateline New Haven with Paul Bass, and his guest today is Dr. Durland Fish.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to a new week on Dateline New Haven and WNHH FM. I'm your host, Paul Bass, inviting you to look behind the headlines on the stories that make our community tick. And we're in that alternative reality world of Zoom. We're not in the studio all together. We're doing radio in the coronavirus age. And my guest today knows a lot about that age. And if you have questions for him, which I think you will when you hear what he does, feel free to post them on our Facebook page, and our producer and station manager, Harry Dross, will read them. We are honored today to have Dr. Durland Fish. He has had a long career trying to figure out how to keep people safe in moments like this. Dr. Fish is a professor emerita at Yale School of Public Health. His field is infectious diseases. He's a retired infectious disease researcher and concerned about people's health right now amid the current outbreak of COVID-19. He has written about what we should do to stay safe. Good morning, Dr. Fish. How are you doing? And from where are we speaking with you?
From my home in Killingworth, Connecticut.
How are things in Killingworth?
I don't know. I haven't been outside.
You don't even go for walks?
Yeah, we're in the country, but It's quiet. It's very quiet.
And actually, you've studied Lyme disease, right? You're kind of in Lyme disease hot zone, right?
Yeah, I am.
But okay, well, anyway, the story of the day is coronavirus. And I thought what I'd do at the beginning of the interview, Dr. Fish, is speak to you specifically about steps you want people to take to avoid spreading the virus, and then speak more generally about infectious diseases and how this fits in with the larger picture of how these infections spread and how we deal with them. So the obvious one we always hear over and over, and that you mentioned first in your recent article, is hand washing. People got to wash at least 20 seconds, right? Sing happy birthday twice, and you can't rush through it at not 78 RPM. Is this the most important way to stop the spread?
That's the most important thing you can do, yes. And, when I've been in public restrooms, rarely have I seen anyone wash their hands with soap and water for 20 seconds. It's a rarity. I haven't been in public restrooms in 2 weeks, so I don't know if that has changed any. Hopefully it has. But people need to take seriously the proper way to wash their hands, which is soap and water, minimum 20 seconds.
And the New York Times had a chart of what spots we miss. And I hadn't thought about this before. Apparently our thumbs rarely get the soap and water, even when we do the 20 seconds. So I've tried to be all thumbs in my hand washing lately. Why is hand washing the most important?
Well, because there's two ways you can pick up this infection. One is from aerosolized particles from people sneezing and coughing. And that's why there's this, minimum 6 foot distance to recommend between people. But other way is to pick it up either on your hands primarily, and then inoculate your face, your eyes, your mouth, your nose, and get the infection that way, which is kind of an indirect way. But it's an important way, and well, nobody knows what proportion of cases are acquired by inhaling aerosols, or what proportion are derived from hands, from contaminated hands. But they're both obviously very important. It's a lot easier to recognize when someone around you is coughing or sneezing, but you don't know how you might be picking up virus on your hands, other than handshaking.
And does washing really take care of it? And 6 feet, like I've been thinking about this, Dr. Fish, because our crew is out reporting every day with people. If you're 6 feet away, are you in the clear?
Well, that's what the recommendations are. I think they've done studies on how far these aerosolized particles will travel, and it's and they estimate that it's about less than 6 feet.
Because it's interesting how when I go walk in my neighborhood every day, and we all understand we're not being rude, someone's walking, one of us steps into the street. But then when we walk past them, we're walking into the path they were just walking. Are we walking into particles they might be leaving, or is this just getting too obsessive and we can never 100% inoculate against the disease? And the idea is to get the vast majority of threat out of the way.
Well, it's really hard to say. I mean, you don't know if someone, has sneezed in the environment that you're going to be walking through. I would imagine that's probably, less likely. I know you recall seeing in China and Korea them going out and sanitizing even the sidewalks. And I think that's because in those areas, uh, people are usually plagued with other respiratory diseases. There's a lot of coughing and particularly spitting going on. And, that's why they do that, presumably. I mean, you can get it on your shoes, maybe, that way. But I'm concerned about, with these indirect methods, because even with social distancing, there are things you can do to protect yourself from contaminating your hands. Um, and these are things that I do. I'm concerned about influenza. I've always been concerned about influenza. I have a partner who has a very serious lung condition, and she might not even survive influenza. So I've been very meticulous about, common sense sanitary practices, for years now that I do routinely without ever thinking of them.
Such as?
Such as handling money.
Oh, yeah, I want to get to handling money now. You spoke about that in your article, Dr. Fish. You said that use credit cards, not cash. Use your own pen if you have to sign for a credit card. But what about when you put your card into an ATM? I guess if you use hand sanitizer after the buttons, are you okay?
Well,
or is this getting too obsessive here?
Well, when I push buttons on an elevator or an ATM or something, I used to use, the fingernail on my little fingernail and touch it that way. That way, the particles aren't likely to last as long on the fingernail as they are in the crevices of your fingers and whatnot. And you can always use hand sanitizer anyway. But I'm very careful about, what I touch. And although studies haven't been done with these viruses on money, we know that other pathogenic agents can survive on money for a certain period of time. And so why take the chance? I mean, that dollar bill that you get back from, the cashier, you don't know if somebody sneezed on it 2 minutes before that. You don't know that. So why bother? Why handle money when you don't have to? Either use a credit card or you use a debit card, and that just keeps you out of contact with contaminated objects.
We're talking to Dr. Durland Fish. He's a lifelong researcher about infectious diseases. He's a retired public health professor at Yale, and he's been writing about and cautioning people about ways to prevent contracting and spreading COVID-19, a timely subject. So when I was reading your story, I was trying to think.
We have a quick question, Paul.
Yeah, we have a question from a reader, a listener. Thank you.
From Angela Petrillo. She says, "Good morning. I had to go to the store yesterday. I'm a senior with serious medical problems. I wore a mask, gloves, carried Clorox water mix. Stores are empty. Hope something gets done. For deliveries, absolutely empty. Take care. Do you wash your hands even if you're not around people at all?"
Good question. Thank you, Angela, for listening and giving a question to Durland Fish.
Well, I personally, I mean, we've been in self isolation here for almost 2 weeks, and so I mean, we haven't been touched anybody. We haven't been anywhere. So I don't routinely wash my hands a lot around here because presumably there's no virus here. But when we went to the store once, when we first came back, we were down in Florida, and we came back early because of this, and we did go to a store and stocked up on things so that we wouldn't have to go out as frequently to pick up supplies. And I used hand sanitizer. and didn't use anybody's pen except my own to sign, and took all the precautions. So I mean, I think that if you have to go out, well, one thing that we're doing here is trying to get neighbors together to go out shopping, so that everybody's not going out when they need something. So there's fewer people, exposed to the grocery store environment than would be if everybody went on their own. And you go early in the morning after they've actually presumably sanitized everything, and there's also stocked up, so that you can, it's probably the safest time to go to a grocery store.
So the safest time is morning, except when they have the senior-only hours at Stop and Shop. At least the first day, it was a panic rush, so everybody was next to each other.
Well, right, you don't want to go when it's crowded. There's a lot of people there. Just wait, or go to a smaller grocery store.
I was wondering about that. So now I'm trying to take these things to an extreme, and I feel like even asking the question, it sounds obsessive. If you have it delivered to your house, I'm assuming you're at less risk than if you're in the store because you're not as close contact with people. But someone from the store has handled your groceries and handed you the bag. Is that still something that exposes you to the virus?
Well, potentially. I mean,
you don't sound too worried about it.
That part. Well, it's everything's a worry. Mm-hmm. Everything you touch is a worry. But we haven't done that. But I wouldn't be overly concerned about it. I haven't. You have to think about who has handled the produce that's in that bag as well.
Right. So should you be concerned about that? Or is it just that's such a small percentage that while anything in life you can get run over when you walk out of your house, it's more in the category of you don't have to obsess over that.
Right. Well,
I'm asking if that's the way to look at it. I don't
know. Nobody knows that, and it depends on to what extreme measures you want to go to. Right.
Okay.
I mean, now I'm at a vulnerable age class, so is my partner, and we don't want to get infected, obviously. So we're just trying to minimize any source of contamination when we're out or when things are delivered.
Durland Fish, so you've spent your life studying the subject. Now it's very real for you, and I do wish you the best with your wife. You're 75 years old, and I guess your wife has a chronic lung condition, correct?
She does.
Which is why you're already careful not to get the flu. How are you guys holding up? Are you having fun? What's it like to be in isolation, be that concerned? You don't seem all stressed out or anything to me. How does one keep one's mental health, and how does one cope with this period of isolation productively?
Well, I wish I could say that was more productive during this.
I don't mean getting work done. I mean not succumbing
to doing things.
Yeah.
Well, we're doing all right here. We're out in the country. We can get outside, go for walks and things. There's plenty of work to do, things that needs to be fixed and things that need to be maintained and cleaned and those kinds of things. We try to keep ourselves busy. We try to have a schedule. It's important to have a schedule.
I've heard that.
Yeah. Or you're just going to sit around and do nothing, which is not good. And you have to kind of force yourself, use a little discipline to follow through, on scheduled things. Like we're going to clean this room this day, or we're going to fix this that day, or we're going to we try to go for a walk out in the woods every afternoon. But then we have to worry about ticks.
Yeah. So, Dr. Fish, you've studied a lot of animal-borne diseases, microbial diseases in your career, such as rodents, that we get from rodents. How does this coronavirus compare with the others you've studied? What's different? What's the same here about, I guess it started with bats?
Right. So, there's similarities with these diseases. A lot of diseases that affect humans originate from wildlife, even influenza viruses, and Lyme disease, and Zika, and
I already forgot about Zika.
Pardon?
I already forgot about Zika. We're always scared about something else every week.
Yeah. Well, but the point is that these all are diseases of wildlife that have jumped and affect humans. and that's happened throughout evolutionary history of humans, and it'll continue to happen. It'll most certainly continue to happen, and it's happening more frequently now because of two things. One is that there's still populations of humans that subsist on wildlife in Africa and Asia, and so these viruses of wildlife are getting in constant contact with people, and some of them can jump. Some of these viruses can jump species if given the opportunity and become infectious between people, which is what's happening with these coronaviruses. And then with modern transportation, they can spread very, very quickly. And these coronaviruses, the last one was SARS, and that one we dodged a bullet on. That could have been very, very severe. But this one has attributes that are much more dangerous in terms of its infectiousness, and the fact that a fair amount, and we don't know exactly how much, transmission goes on by people who have no signs of infection.
Was that not true for SARS?
That was true for SARS too,
Mm-hmm.
but perhaps not as much. I haven't really, compared the two. But without knowing who's infected, it's hard to quarantine people who are infected because you don't know who they are.
Are you more infectious when you show symptoms, or is it equal that before you show symptoms?
When you're coughing and sneezing, presumably you're shedding a lot of virus.
Right.
But, we don't know how these asymptomatic people are transmitting the virus, but there's overwhelming evidence that they can and do.
And
so
I'm sorry,
that's why we're trying. That's why this social distancing. It doesn't matter who has it. You have to assume everyone's infected. That's the best thing to do. Everyone's infected, and everything it touches is infected. Mm-hmm. So social distancing, is important to do. But on top of that, even with social distancing, you have to put up these other barriers that would keep your hands free of virus from inanimate objects like pens. I mean, I told you we, always carry your own pen, never touch a pen, even at a pharmacy. Even now, you go into a pharmacy and they have a plastic pen attached to the machine that you have to sign for the prescription, and then you have to sign again to pay for it. And I'll not touch that pen.
All right, don't touch that pen. And don't touch that dial, because you're listening to Dr. Durland Fish, an expert lifelong on infectious diseases, retired Yale School public health professor, now emerita. And he's here on Dateline New Haven on WNHH-FM, your home for community radio, 103.5 FM, live streamed at newhavenindependent.org. Dr. Fish, how much trouble are we in? You said we dodged the bullet in SARS. Are we going to dodge this bullet? And if we don't, how bad is it going to get in New Haven? We say we're 10 days, now I guess 8 days behind Italy. Are we going to have are we going to have 500,000, 2,000 deaths in the city? Are we going to have people in the hospital without beds? They're going to have to do triage and who gets to live and die. Is it that dire?
Well, this is what epidemiologists have dreaded for a long, long time. And, we predicted it. It's going to, this is not a surprise to us to study these kinds of diseases. It was inevitable, and we're not prepared. We're not prepared. The politicians don't always listen to the scientists, and now, we're paying the price. Mm-hmm. But you have to be prepared for the worst case scenario. And the worst case scenario, happened in China when the thing emerged, where the number of cases doubled about every 5 days, as it is here, maybe even less. And without draconian measures to control them, like people staying home, it'll continue at this rate. And eventually, herd immunity will take effect, and that's the case in which half the population has already acquired the infection, And those that were recovered, which, and again, 80% of people have, very few, if any, symptoms, they'll recover. And then, in time, half the population will be immune, because once you've had it, you're not going to get it again.
So is that true with the second wave? Because remember the 1980 flu, and I guess I'm not an expert like you. I get the sense from reading that sometimes herd immunity works, and sometimes you get a second wave of a virus that has mutated enough that you're not inoculated against it the second time. Do I misunderstand that?
Well, that's true. When influenza viruses do change, we know they change. That's why we have a different flu vaccine every year. But we don't know that that's the case with coronavirus. We don't know that. I think that there's not evidence that people have been sequencing these viruses from different areas. And as far as I know, they haven't seen, big changes. Now, that may, I don't know if that'll happen, if that'll stay that way for a long time, but let's hope that it will. But the point is that at this point, half the population is going to have to get infected before the transmission rate goes down, right? If nothing is done. So half the population in the U.S. is 160 million people. And
but in order to get that herd immunity, don't you have to expose more of the population to the virus? Because if you're isolating everyone, you never get to the point of that herd immunity.
Well, I'm explaining the worst case scenario. Okay. Now we don't know how. Well, let me get back to that. But worst case scenario, do nothing, and half the population will get infected. That's 160 cases, even with a 1% mortality. That's 1.6 million deaths. Okay, if we can dampen that and extend the doubling time, that will, what they say, flatten the curve. It'll be longer before we get to herd immunity, or we can maybe even prevent herd immunity if we can slow transmission down enough so that the virus doesn't have a positive, replication rate. How we're going to achieve that, I don't know if we can achieve that. I mean, the Chinese did with, draconian, methods, the enforcement of social distancing, the enforcement of people to stay home, with stiff penalties if they don't. And I don't think we can do that. I mean, we're asking for people to volunteer to do that, but I don't know how effective that's going to be. There's deniers out there who think this is just like another influenza, and they're not going to change
hoax. We keep hearing the word hoax. Sean Hannity said it was a hoax. Rand Paul, before he got it, said it was a hoax. Is it a hoax? Not a hoax.
Obviously, it's not a hoax. But so
how long are we going to be sheltered in place, do you think? Those of us who don't think it's a hoax, how long are we going to be living like this?
I don't think 14 days is going to tell us much. I really don't, because again, these measures are voluntary. I don't know what the percent compliance is, but it's not going to be enough. I don't think it's going to be enough to show a difference after 14 days. I don't think we're going to know where we are in 14 days. I mean, obviously, testing, there's going to be more cases because of testing, and you don't know, the real number of cases is going down or not. You're not going to know that. But I would say, going from the Chinese experience, right, where they actually had an effective method of controlling this virus, it took them 3 months before they had no new cases for about a week now. Mm-hmm. So I would say that's a minimum for us.
Because you don't know if we're going to be able to replicate what they did.
Not unless we call in the Chinese army.
Okay, Dr. Fish, before I let you go, and thank you so much for chatting with us. I want to now move to La La Land, where we get optimistic. You had mentioned earlier in this program, and tell me if I'm saying this wrong, part of why this was inevitable is because we've become a more connected world. if somebody in Africa or China, where they depend on wildlife for food, contracts this virus, it's going to spread more quickly around the globe. We're more connected, so we're going to get each other's viruses. Do you think this, at a time when nationalism of an ugly sort has spread the globe, do you think this experience might convince us that we're all connected in ways that we can tackle problems together? Since we're not going to be able to close our borders from viruses, we're not going to be able to just have us all live in islands anymore. The world's gotten smaller. Do you think in the end we'll come out of this more resolved as a world, rather than blame each other and call this the American virus or the Chinese virus, that we're going to say this is the human virus, and that the solutions are human solutions where we work together as a world to identify, contain, and function well together?
Well, yes, I think this is an important lesson. I mean, we'll get through this. Most of us will, but it should be a very important lesson that it is one world, and there are a lot of pathogens out there, and we don't know a lot about them. But we need to learn more about them. Are these things preventable? Well, I think the epidemics would be preventable to some extent with proper surveillance and more research, having more people out in the field looking for these pathogens, and having good health systems that would detect infections in humans at an early stage. But we have to know what we're fighting against initially. So we have to have a better idea of what kind of pathogens are out there that might infect humans in the future.
So I don't want to put words in your mouth. It doesn't seem like you were saying exactly what I was saying, that the lesson is we work together as a world. It sounded to me, and tell me if I'm wrong, that the lesson is that we all have to take science more seriously, that we have to be more proactive in trying to figure out about these pathogens, what they are, and how we prevent the spread.
Well, you're exactly right. I mean, we're in the position we're in now because politicians didn't take the science seriously. Mm-hmm. And that's a big problem. I mean, politicians aren't scientists. I mean, there's a few that are physicians and things, but there aren't any epidemiologists that are politicians that I know of. And furthermore, they don't have a good scientific advisors on their staff. Not everybody has a scientific advisor on their staff, so they don't know how to interpret information properly, and they should. Every senator and every congressperson should have a science-trained person on their staff, so that we can make informed decisions on things like this and other things that affect people in society.
And can I do one last sermon to see if you agree with this one? That this isn't a Democratic or Republican issue. This isn't a hate Trump or like Trump issue. You know, I tend to be someone who's skeptical of Trump. I feel this is endemic to the political system, and that we're spinning our wheels and not dealing with core issues when we're turning this into political fights about specific political parties and people. That what you're identifying is a fundamental challenge we have as a country and a world to get up to speed fast on this stuff and take it seriously. Would you agree with that sermon, or do you have a twist on it?
Well, I mean, again, I would agree with that. I mean, and again, they don't have these problems in China. I'm not advocating, right, a communist government, but the fact is that they have a better healthcare system because it's nationalized.
Oh, the problems of a free society, right? I have another question here. Kathy Garalami, she says, thank you for the info. Do we know what shape Yale New Haven Hospital is in so far in preparing?
By we, you're probably referring to me. And, honestly, I don't know. I haven't been in the campus, for months. So I don't know what's going on there. I haven't been in contact with them. But I can tell you that, Yale has tremendous resources, intellectual resources, a lot of smart people there. And I'm sure they're doing absolutely the best they can. I mean, I know people at Yale are working on diagnostics, improving tests and things like that. I mean, I think that I think that, I mean, maybe I'm incorrect, but I think that, pretty much all the research has stopped at Yale except for coronavirus research. And so people have switched fields and switched their research objectives to focus on coronavirus. So, I mean, I think that's good, and I think that Yale and New Haven are in a pretty good position to deal with this, much more than a lot of other communities.
So, Doc, can I follow up on that? So, I would agree with you based on my own reporting that if I had to pick a place to live, I'd like it to be New Haven because of the way Yale New Haven has taken this seriously, and because of it's a very good health system, in my opinion. Nothing's perfect, but they've always done well. But I think there's a bigger problem that is
Florida.
Florida, but it's not specific to Yale New Haven. I'm getting told that, like every hospital dealing with this, unless we flatten the curve dramatically, they're only going to have 1/6, even under a good scenario. Yale New Haven will have only 1/6 as many beds as it needs to handle the COVID-19 patients who will come in. And that's even with extra beds being made available because there's stuff beyond their control, including how many supplies we have and how much money we get from the federal government and what other facilities we're trying to hustle to create other facilities to deal with subacute overflow. But there's also, you need the specialized rooms. I mean, you know this so much better than I do about the low pressure so the oxygen doesn't flow out of the room and affect other people. And I think you're already having doctors who have to spend a week with the same mask and 95 respirator that they have to continually disinfect. Whereas, and this blew my mind, this probably won't blow yours, I didn't realize that in the past, meaning until 2 weeks ago, if you were in one of those low pressure rooms and you were a healthcare worker, you changed the mask 50 times in a shift in dealing with the same patient. You went through 50 masks with one patient. And now, because of the shortage, you have to use one mask for the whole week. Am I getting that wrong?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm not privy to that kind of information, and I'm not an MD. I don't work in a hospital. But from what I've heard, it's the same thing you've heard. Yeah, there's critical shortage of equipment, and it's going to be very difficult to manage all of these critically ill patients if they continue to come in at the rate, or actually an accelerated rate, as they are now. Yeah, I think the healthcare system's in big trouble, and well, it doesn't look good to me. I'm worried. I mean, that's why I'm here. I'm going to be here for the next couple of months. I hope I don't have to go to the hospital for any reason. But if everyone did that, I think that we could slow down the epidemic and minimize the pressure on the healthcare system.
Well, Dr. Durland Fish, I'm glad you're here, and I appreciate it.
Let me jump in with one last question, Paul. One last question from Levi Lewis. There's a lot of information out there that is leading to the idea that this was something that was planned. Is there factual data that shows how this was something intentionally done to depopulate society? What do you say to the information that is out there?
Well, it's typical that during times of epidemics, where a lot of information is not known, that rumors start and conspiracy theories start. I mean, we see this over and over, and it's to be expected. And you just have to, try to debunk these ideas as soon as they start. But there'll be a lot more ridiculous claims as time goes on. And there's absolutely no truth to that whatsoever. I mean, this virus came presumably from bats. Bats have a lot of coronaviruses in them, and nobody would go out and find one of these things and purposely get it into the human population, especially since it's not. I mean, who are you going to kill? You're going to kill everybody. You're not going to kill any particular group of people or any nationality or anything else. So it's just an insane hypothesis.
Harry, do we have any more questions from listeners?
Well, one last statement from Rodney Williams. Paul, I appreciate him coming on this show and telling us what he knows.
Thank you very much, Rodney, and thank you for listening. Thanks, everyone, for questions, for listening. And I want to thank you, Dr. Fish. Thank you for making time to speak today. Thank you for a lifetime of research aimed at keeping us safe and healthy in the face of natural health disasters. And I hope that you and your wife enjoy your time sheltered in place and emerge from it healthy and ready to do more work. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
And I want to thank Yale New Haven Hospital for providing financial support for today's program. And I want to thank Harry Drost, the miracle man behind the controls, who always makes WNHHF FM run and now is bringing us to new realms of cyberspace with really not a glitch. So thanks for joining us today. This is Paul Bass thanking you for listening to Dateline New Haven. And if I'm not mistaken, we may be taking you out the way we usually do, with the Afro-Semitic experience performing I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free from the group CD, A Plea for Peace. This is Paul Bass inviting you to fly free with us all day and all night long at WNHH-FM, your home. There it is, for community radio.
The way I'm touching on you, oh yeah. Put your body on me. My hands are on your shoulder. Let's finish what we started. I can't wait to touch your body. I can't wait to touch your body. We ain't gotta tell nobody. I can't wait to touch your body. Kiss me and make me believe that this moment we're